Alrighty. What's up, fellas?
We're live. Come on.
Mr. Jordan.
Found him.
So, if no one knows who Mr. Jordan Bowditch is, he is a human being. He's very dope. We met at Bulletproof. So we both. I mean, maybe we want to mention that, but yeah, we both work for Bulletproof.
So,
And and he's kind of like a brother from another mother in the sense that he's hardcore into the self-development world, right? He has a passion for growth, as I do, and and he experiments with his own life in order to see where the growth sort of happens.
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Personal development junkie, guilty.
yeah, he is a junkie for sure. And I'm gonna call it a group of homies, and they call themselves the Mystic Misfits.
Mm-hmm.
And they host retreats, events. Yeah. Do you want to talk about a little bit about what that is?
Yeah, definitely. So the Mystic Misfits are comprised of myself, my older brother Ryan, and my best friend Kevin Oros. And like you said, we host international retreats, various in-person experiences and events. We also do live-in immersion experiences at our home in Encinitas, North County, San Diego. We affectionately refer to this place as Mystic Manor. And we also have like an online group coaching program called the Misfit Academy. And we do all kinds of stuff. Like the core concepts that we're known for are like radical honesty, raw, authentic communication, elevated connection, some of that more like language communication type of stuff. And then almost like the antithesis or the other side of the coin, I guess you could say, is full body stuff. Whereas the language and the communication is much more in the head and in the brain. We also counterbalance that with bioenergetics and stuff that's like full body and like no talking. And that looks like active meditations. So my boy Osho, definitely a big influence on me, which maybe we'll get into the documentary Wild Wild Country a little bit on this.
Yeah.
That just came out. So really that balance of the brain and the body, the heart and the head, and the integration and flow between them to essentially be the most badass version of ourselves, which is also super in alignment with Bulletproof, where Bulletproof is a lot of like the hardcore biohacking, like nutrition, lifestyle, and a lot of those inputs. I think this is maybe like the perfect complementary piece to that. Is the stuff that the Mystic Misfits get into.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very like with Bulletproof, the biohacking is very experimental, and it's kind of like these people have gone through their own experiments to sort of connect to emotions, which we can talk about why that's even important. But and they find the results and they've shared it. And one of those people is Osho, and the active meditation and like getting into your body and really connecting to what the heck is there. So this is what I like to do with these. So about pretty much talking about what someone like you is actually going through right now.
Yeah.
Like what is like so super present with you that maybe that you're struggling with, that you've been feeling, because it's really easy to talk about the successes and all the cool things that we're doing in our lives, but like how I feel like it's beneficial for people to see that, man, maybe it's not all pretty, or maybe what you're feeling right now is very pretty. So that's cool too. But
yeah,
like what's maybe a block in your life or whatever?
Yeah. So that's actually a question that I ask a lot, like as an icebreaker for people. So that's perfect. Like what's most present with you right now? Cause that could go any number of directions. So I'll just, whatever comes up, come out. I'll try and keep like maybe a negative or a struggle and a positive, like a success I'm experiencing, just to give a nice balance there. Man, I'll just say that like the past few days, not as much today, but the few days leading up to today, I've been in like the most fiery flow state, bro. Like maybe the most sustained I've ever felt in my entire life, where I've felt just so confident, so inspired, so in my body. And to that point, I think that I find that when I'm most happy and I'm most aligned, I'm in my body a lot. Like throughout the day, I'm constantly, whether it's just banging out 100 push-ups, or I have a perfect pull-up bar and doing as many pull-ups as I can. Going down to the beach with my dog, Biggie James Smalls, affectionately referred to as Bulletproof Biggie, who I also, I feed him like bulletproof products and like brain octane oil and collagen protein, all that stuff.
Yeah.
He has raw grass-fed ground beef as his primary diet. So he's like full-on bulletproof. But really the main thing is basketball, actually. That's like my physical exertion of choice. And so when I'm consistently playing basketball, I find like a strong correlation to just overall feelings of joy. And I've played basketball 5 out of the last 6 days, which is the most I've done in like probably years. And so that's been really awesome. I think
so sorry, I'm going to cut you off.
Yeah, go for it.
What do you attribute, like, how do you experience the flow? Because not everyone that's going to be listening to this even understands what that even means, or why that's even cool, or why that's even an awesome experience to have. Like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, great question. So a flow state, many people know that as like being in the zone. That's what it's like been traditionally referred to as. But a lot of modern science has now been able to like measure what that actually means. It's not just this like esoteric concept where it's just like, oh, I'm just like in the zone. It's like, actually, no, there is a neurochemistry, biological measurability that's going on when you're in a quote flow state. And what that might look like. And so, like Stephen Kotler and Jamie Wheel, they wrote a book called The Rise of Superman.
Yeah.
And they have a group called the Flow Genome Project. They've been on the Bulletproof podcast, and they're really on the cutting edge of looking at the science behind flow states. And it's kind of cool. I've heard it explained by Stephen Kotler, I think specifically in his book, The Rise of Superman. He's like, basically what your brain looks like when you're in a flow state, it looks like you are on a cocktail of drugs, basically. Like all of the most gnarly drugs, like MDMA, ecstasy or whatever, and like opiates, all these things, your brain is just firing. Now that's maybe a bit of an extreme comparison, but basically you're all those happy, feel good things that contribute to you, like being in your highest states, they're all present when you're in a flow state. And what we're finding is the correlation between certain activities inducing a flow state and physical activity being a big one. And it can be just like running, anything where you're getting in your body. But I find, and it seems like the more intense, like the more like life-threatening sometimes. So like bungee jumping or skydiving or those kind of things, extreme sports. And also for me, team competitive sports like basketball is where I really find my flow. So yeah, that's basically what a flow state is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And what are you feeling?
Yeah, some telltale signs of a flow state is time dilation. That's a big one where it's like time stops. And it's like, it's polarizing in the sense that it can seem like 1 second is eternity, or, hours are 1 second. So it's like both sides of it at the same time. So literally like time is like not a thing. It's just like full presence. And oftentimes when you're in a flow state, you are able to do things that you thought you couldn't do. Now there is like a fine line, right? It's like typically you find that here's your comfort zone, this circle, this bubble. And right when you're on the fringe of it, that's when you hit flow. So it's like not too easy in the sense that it's like perfectly in your comfort zone, because then it's just like there's no challenge. You're just like, you're not really doing anything necessarily. And then on the opposite end, if you're so far outside of your comfort zone, and like your ability, like your literal ability, then it's just like, it's too hard. And so there's like a balance there where you're right on the fringe. And I find that the more that I play with that edge, the bigger my like abilities become, and the more intense my flow states get, and the more intense I have to show up to like get in that flow state. And so it's kind of like the same concept as stress, like and fear just in general. The more I face fear, the more that I put myself under good stress, because there can be too much and bad stress. the more that threshold increases and the more I like grow and I experience growth. And that's really the best personal development I can imagine.
Totally.
Yeah.
So okay. So sounds like you're talking about more athletic flow at the moment. So, okay. So that's interesting because, okay. So there's this guy that I follow. He, what's his name? Orrin Harris. I don't know if you've heard of him.
I am familiar. I don't like the name is familiar.
Yeah. So he calls himself the flow coach sometimes, or transformational coach. But he talks about, if we could get more esoteric with it, he talks about like there's a flow state that obviously is the athletic one, but then there's the flow state that happens in your life when you actually are like having zero resistance to everything coming your way, and zero resistance to your desires and your feelings, and zero resistance to even if it's anger or sadness or anything that's happening in your environment. And it makes life almost like go in warp speed, meaning things are happening almost automatically around you. It's like freaking super fast manifestation, right?
Yeah.
It's like, are you talking about that a little bit?
So it's all under the same umbrella, right? I was just giving maybe like one category under the umbrella of flow. And I find that strong correlation that when I'm in my body and in an athletic sense, it contributes to flow throughout my life. It permeates every single facet of my life. And so now that could look like writing, like writing. I've gotten in really intense writing flow states before. Now that's a bit different. And again, if I'm in my body and I play basketball and I come back and I start writing, I find that I get into a flow state more easily with writing. So there's things that help like create the right atmosphere to get into a flow state with like that more heady type of work, right? And there's also like an alignment of purpose, of divine, unique mission and purpose that contributes to flow. So if I'm writing about some shit I don't care about, I'm going to experience probably a lot of resistance, and it's not going to be easy to get in that flow. But if I'm writing about something that I'm super passionate about and that excites the shit out of me, it'll probably be a lot easier. It still might be difficult though. Like, make no mistake, like getting into flow with writing, I find a lot of resistance. My brain will go any number of ways to try and like not sit down and focus and get in that deep work zone of writing. And then there's just like social flow, and it all like intermingles, it's all like very like interconnected. It's a web of when you experience a little bit of flow over here and a little bit over here, it all like comes together and makes like one effortless flow, which is kind of like what you were essentially talking about. It's pure presence. It's such a cool, calm, collected confidence that I find myself tapping into this level of intuition and of just knowing that's effortless. Like you said, I make decisions and do things and say things that I don't think about. I just feel and act. It's like a simultaneous type of thing. Like, that's flow.
Yeah. And it's not even feel act. It's like you're doing both simultaneously.
Exactly. Yeah.
Totally present. And so I love that we're talking about this, because it really leads to the question of, well, how do we increase the chance of flow happening? And we talked about it for a second, like releasing resistance to life, right? So it's like, or to any feelings, right? Because the flow state is a very like feeling. It's a feeling state, right? There's a lot of energy, things flowing through you, and so no resistance, right? And so to use your example with like writing, I'd imagine a thing that would take you out of flow state is a thought or a feeling that what you're writing is shit, like judging your own writing, right? So to increase the chance of you having flow in your writing, it's to feel through what you're really afraid of. So that's, it's interesting to me.
And something that was just coming up for me is a bit of a tangent, but also very much on what we're talking about, is you might consider flow a feminine energy. And so what I mean by that is there's like, and I'm going to get a little woo-woo here as well, but there's feminine and masculine energy, right? And it's a spectrum that lives within all of us. So typically men their default setting is masculine energy. Typically women, the default setting is feminine energy. So to me, and what most people would agree, and you can probably attest to this, feminine energy looks like what's compared to nature. So mother nature, right? And father son. Mother nature is constantly changing. It's emotions, it's feeling, it's storms, it's the changing seasons, it's love, it's pure presence. It's something that's like, it's unpredictable, right? It's kind of hard to explain. It's irrational at times. It's very feeling based. Whereas masculine is very logic. It's very constant. It's very like consistent. Father, son, the sun rises every morning, sets every night, and it shines all day. You know, there might be clouds. Guess what? That's Mother Nature, the clouds. That's what like fucks with the constant father, son, right? And that's like very logical. A leads to B leads to C. It's goal setting. It's like timelines. It's whereas feminine energy would be timeless. And so,
and like intentions and
yeah. So from that perspective, you could say that flow is a feminine state. You know, that's I've never even really thought of that parallel, but that's kind of interesting to think about.
No, it's awesome. And what I was thinking about when you're saying that too is like, you can make your flow more powerful by working on the masculine parts. Like, what is your intention with life, right? Like, what are you trying to create? What do you want to be in flow to? Like, where, you know, like, you know, I'd imagine if your intentions are more loving and to create loving environments for other people, then your flow will create big things. But if you're just focused on basketball, then it'll create great and awesome experiences with basketball.
Totally.
So it seems like an awesome dance between the two. So it's like, yeah, they both definitely, obviously, which makes sense, support each other.
100%. Like they flow into one another, because if you're constantly in the flow, not necessarily a flow state, but you have no intention in your life, and you're kind of just like being reactive in a sense to what's happening, then there's not going to be much consistency. There's not going to be much direction. But when you have that balance of direction and consistency and goals and intentionality, then the flow within that is that much more powerful. So, this also reminds me of this concept of freedom within discipline, which freedom and discipline seem like they're like they're opposites essentially, right? However, if you look at it from the perspective of, well, okay, I'm disciplined. I have a morning routine, I have an evening routine, and I have like maybe I'll make a schedule for what my day is going to look like. That discipline now gives me a sandbox to play in, right? It gives me like this structure to be able to flow in through, and knowing that it's going to shift and change a bit. But if I have none of that, then I'll just wake up and whenever, you know, which is cool. I don't wake up to an alarm clock almost ever anymore. I just naturally wake up, you know, between 6:30 and 7:30. That's just how my body operates now. I love that. Like waking up to an alarm clock that like jars me is an awful way to wake up. And I did that for years, you know? But anyways, like waking up and just like flowing into the day, maybe like being reactive and checking my phone instead of like being proactive and jumping right into the things that I know fill my spirit. Those kind of things they lack intentionality. And so I'm probably not going to live my highest ideal and like fully realize my purpose, because I'm in too much of a feminine flow without any of that direction.
Totally.
Yeah.
So is there a feeling, an emotion that you feel and catch yourself being super resistive to or having a hard time letting out? Like, I know for me, anger is a big one.
Yeah.
Like I have trouble really letting my anger out. So I tend to be quite passive aggressive. And that's been a growing awareness in myself. First off, I have fear of anger, like flat out. I can be totally honest about that. And I'm sure there's a lot of good reason why. So it would make sense that I'm somewhat afraid of my own. And I would like to not believe that I'm an angry person. I can even admit that to myself as well. And so it's like it's weird, like in the spiritual world, right? You like anger, anger's not loving, right?
And it's a low vibration emotion, brother.
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, but the funny thing about the way emotions work is you can't skip emotions to get to deeper ones. And
Yeah.
so if you're trying to, it's what they call spiritual bypassing, right? So
Yep.
like I can't ever get to what's under my anger until I actually connect to the anger, and I can't connect to the anger until I release my resistance to it, or my judgment towards it, or like my fears of it, and all the things associated with fear that's causing it to just be stuck
Totally.
and
Well,
passive.
yeah. So you're talking about beautiful duality in a sense, right? Like with the classic, without light, there is no dark. Without dark, there is no light. Without anger, there is no joy, because there's no point of comparison. Now, I will say that I think you and I are very similar as far as just like the way we operate from a baseline level. I also would say that I'm afraid of my anger. It's not something that I'll tend to be passive aggressive to avoid anger coming up, or like to show my anger, because I have this public persona and this person that I want people to believe I am. And if I'm feeling something other than what I want the world to perceive me as, which anger being that main one, I'll avoid it. And that looks like passive aggressiveness, and what happens there is oftentimes that like repressed emotion. I've heard it said, what you resist persists. So I can resist anger, but you better bet your sweet ass it's going to persist in a different way. If I just, push it way down, if I repress it, then it becomes suppressed emotion. And then it's just like stored throughout my nervous system and biology, and in ways that I don't even consciously realize, because it's such a complex chemistry set, our bodies, and everything is so interconnected that it may come out in a way in another scenario that's like truly not a big deal, but I have this strong like reaction to it, and I won't even know why. And so a way I counter that is a couple different ways. Bioenergetics is a big one. And so like there's this theory, or this like you could even call it like a methodology, where it's like the issue is in the tissues. And so all of those repressed emotions get stored in the tissue. And the way you get rid of those is you freaking flex your tissues. And so back to like some of the Osho active meditations, the core foundational one that Osho was best known for, that's like the one that's most commonly known, is dynamic meditation, which is meant to be done at sunrise, typically, from like 6 to 7 a.m. And it's a very methodical 1 hour, 5-part active meditation, extremely physical. This ain't no, seated lotus trying to not think about things. No, this is extremely embodied. And one of those 5 pieces to it is catharsis. So for 10 minutes, the idea is to consciously go mad. All of those, any emotion that you can think of that you've ever had or felt, you just kind of let it go, and it's not like you necessarily, sometimes it's like a fake it till you make it scenario. In fact, most times for me, I'm just fake it. And then, oh shit, as I am faking this and just like allowing myself to yell and like get angry and like hit the ground, or like flail my body about, or yell or cry or laugh and like smile and just make funny noises and stuff like that, that like almost insanity, just like letting go of anything that's inside of me. That's like a release, a bioenergetic release of some of that stored anger that otherwise I would just continue to be stored. And I believe that that's a very healthy way to let out anger. Now, that's one way. The other way is when you feel angry in the moment, express it. Now, what that doesn't look like is being like a reactive asshole. Like if somebody says something or does something and I get angry as a result, I'm not going to like impulsively react and like spit anger back at them, but in a, powerful, assertive, but compassionate and loving way, say, hey, I'm feeling this way in reaction to what I'm experiencing of you. And that's where the combination of language comes into play. You feel into the emotions and what you're experiencing, but instead of like directing that at you and saying, you made me feel this way, and giving my power away and like being a victim to you, it's like, no, you can't make me feel fucking anything. I make myself feel a certain way and choose to react how I want to react. And so, yeah, those like are 2 ways to address anger for me that have like up leveled the shit out of my life. And it's an ongoing practice. It ain't easy, especially in, you know, certain situations, and like intimacy, you know, with the lady, that can be a tough one to navigate. So I definitely want to be like sensitive to their feelings and whatnot. But at the same time, you know, I'm not responsible necessarily for how they feel or how they react to something.
Yep. And yeah, totally. And I'd imagine, I know for me, like when there's actually anger there, but my mind's like, no, but this is a moment to be that sensitive guy for your lady or whatever. I'm really just totally lying to myself, and I'm
Yeah.
lying to her, and she's probably not even feeling like I'm being sensitive, even though I'm really trying to. And so
Yeah.
it's way better to admit to ourselves, which is it can be such a humbling and courageous thing to admit to myself that right now I actually don't care that she's feeling this way.
Yeah. It's detachment.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then start from that truth. And that's an uncomfortable place to go to, but it's where you can actually get to the place where you do care, because in that place you can actually feel like your intentions, your beliefs, like what's taking emotional priority over loving this person right now and giving them your sweet attention, compassion, and space. And
Yeah.
it's the ugly emotions that's constricting yourself and the moment, which is affecting everything in the moment. And so you can't really open that. First off, by the way, you could do it so fast, right? This is like what my favorite thing about emotional work is. It's fucking permanent, meaning the changes that you make, the little shifts, they're permanent. They don't require maintenance. So once you allow yourself, or I've allowed myself, to become courageous in the moment and admit to myself something that could be quite dark, that, oh shit, like I actually don't care in this moment, or I am actually judging her. I actually think she's this, that, and that. That's the only time I've ever made progress towards actually feeling like, damn, that's fucked up, first off.
Yeah.
But now I can actually like feel a little bit more of her because I was just honest with myself. And now I feel like I want to give her a big hug. I want to freaking
Yeah.
love on her. I want to love on myself and like pat myself on the back
Totally,
for that
man.
whole moment.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
Yeah.
like for me, it's foregoing short-term like pleasure or like the easy way out for long-term, like you said, permanent, sustainable upgrades that are ultimately going to bring you closer together, you know, in the context of a couple, but also to yourself and to like your own power and truth. And with this, another like concept that's coming up for me is the concept of being a peacekeeper or a peacemaker. And so this has been a huge theme in my life because my dad, I've always looked up to him and admire him so many. I think you've met my dad a couple times.
Oh
He
yeah.
probably at the Bulletproof Conference and other stuff, but he's got the joy of the Lord in him, man. He's like a OG Christian evangelist, and he's just the most kind, loving, awesome person I know. And so I always looked up to him because no matter what happened in his life, he's just always happy, seemingly, right? Now, as I've become an adult and gotten to know him more, he still is that person, make no mistake. But he is a peacekeeper at the expense of his ultimate happiness and his real truth. And so what that looks like oftentimes is him being a martyr. It often looks like him not expressing himself and becoming passive aggressive and it coming out in other ways. Now a peacemaker is a bone breaker sometimes, man. You know, like in the moment, it's like, it's shitty. It can feel shitty. It can seem shitty. And the other person might perceive it as shitty. But just like I was saying, giving up the short term, you know, like peacekeeping for the long term, like real peacemaking, that's like so valuable to me. It's a lesson that I'm constantly learning.
Yeah, I love that, dude. And it reminds me of a concept that I'm practicing more and more too, is how love and truth are like Siamese twins. They're literally attached at the hip, right?
Yeah.
You can't love someone while you're lying to them.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is also, I forget the poetic way of saying this, but it's a sharp motherfucking sword.
Totally.
It's a knife, and what it does is it cuts through illusion and things that aren't real, right? And that could feel literally like pain in someone else when you're exposing the truth and saying something that feels true to you, or that may be universally true, and it could feel like something's dying inside of them, and they may not like you in that moment, and they may not whatever, and they may not like you forever after that moment.
Yeah.
But it's still, I feel like the only way to, like in that moment, it's I'm still learning this, but it is an act of love.
100%, man. It's like, it's ultimate love, because it's like, it's truly unconditional love. And this is like something that I'm really intentionally cultivating in my life, is the concept of polarity, right? Which can be, that can be within a sexual intimate relationship, the concept of like, you know, masculine feminine polarity, and like strengthening that magnetic field. But in this context, more generally speaking, I'm trying to live in such a radically authentic state always, that I'm strongly attracting the things that I want, and equally as strongly repelling the things that I don't want.
Yeah.
And like, to your point, sometimes it's going to fucking hurt, dude. But the aggregate sum is going to be positive. It's going to be trending in the positive direction, even when in those certain situations it'll feel really awful, and somebody might forever not want to be like associated with you. Guess what? Really, that's actually what you want, even if it feels like you don't. And hey, sometimes you might fuck up. Maybe you won't say it or do the thing that you actually really want, and that's where the ongoing process of learning and growing comes from.
Yeah, totally. And it's like refining our expression of truth, because sometimes we could be expressing truth, but behind it is this intention of like judging this person, or trying to change them, or not seeing them as they are. And there may not even be any love present, to be honest, when we're expressing it. And so that's when taking self-responsibility, and then growing the intense skill of self-reflection, and like looking back at past actions. But I don't know, man, like being courageous enough to take the action in the moment, even if it feels like the right thing. And I feel like instantly after, life will sort of, what I've noticed is life or my consciousness, or whatever, my conscience sort of like tells me there was something off about what you just did right there.
Totally.
Right? But I'll never know that if I don't freaking take the action. And that's something I'm working with right now. It's like, I want to do everything so perfectly that sometimes it could take me freaking weeks or a month before I ever muster up the damn courage to fucking tell someone the truth about how I feel. And then, but like, if I would have just taken the action, a month could have been gone down to like 10 minutes.
Yep. Just like a moment, basically. Well, and the concept that comes up for me there is paralysis by analysis. This is something that like Kevin and Ryan and I are always like checking each other on. Like, are you so in your head analyzing shit that you're actually paralyzed to take the action? Yeah. And, you know, like we said, you may not be so pretty, and maybe if you would have analyzed a little bit more, it would have been better. But it, like, you can spend your whole life doing that and do a fraction of the work that I think that we're called to do. Because done is better than perfect, man. Like, we're never going to get perfect. How about we just fucking get it done and then course correct? There's this book, actually, I think it's called like Ready, Fire, Aim. That's what it is. Yeah. I haven't even read the book, but the concept behind it is, you know, it's ready, aim, fire is like the traditional what you're supposed to do, right? If you're shooting a gun or whatever, you're ready, you aim, and fuck, maybe you're aiming forever because you're just like, ugh, I'm not quite there. It keeps moving. What if you instead were to be like, okay, I'm ready, fire. Boom. Like you're so ready, and you're so in your like intuition and in your power that you're just like, ready, fire. And then it's like, okay, I wasn't quite there. Now I'm going to aim a little bit and fire again. And so you're course correcting, but you're taking action.
Totally. And what helps the process too, for sure, is like, well, first off, one thing that I've noticed for sure, and I'm like witnessing that emotional pattern anytime I'm in my head a ton, it's because I'm afraid of something.
Totally.
100% of the time. And so the question that I've been asking myself is, what am I afraid of in this moment? And a lot of times I'm looking for, what's the facade here that I'm scared to let go of? Like you said, like being angry in public or in front of my lady, or front of other people. What am I so scared of losing? What image am I so afraid of losing? And it's like, once we could break down the barriers of facade and our attachment to it, like I feel like it just quickens this whole entire process.
Yeah. And dude, I love the phrase you said. It like keeps resonating in my mind, refining your expression of truth.
Yeah.
That's the practice. And the only way you get that practice to get perfect is by practicing consistently. And then it's going to like get better and better and zero in on like the ultimate truth. And that's the practice.
Yeah, dude. The taking action part is so freaking important.
Yeah. Well, dude, I have to get bouncing here in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
But something that I've been asking people a lot when I'm having a conversation at like the end of it is, what are you going to do in the next 24, 48 hours, like in the immediate future? What kind of inspired immediate action are you going to take to propel yourself into your ultimate purpose, into your bliss and further you in your mission?
Yeah, I like that, man.
Yeah.
Well, man, I feel like conversations like this are really helpful to people. So I
Yeah.
definitely want to do whatever editing I need to do, which is not going to be that much, but really just like giving context to this conversation and releasing it, and just letting people, enjoy it and find something from it.
Dude, I've really enjoyed this conversation. So I think like done is better than perfect, brother. Like you said, minimal editing.
Most
Um,
def.
so I look forward to seeing this published in whatever fashion in the next 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah.
Boom!
Ooh, wow. Challenge taken, bro. Challenge taken.
So my answer to that same question would be, oh, this is something that keeps coming up. So I'm going to say it. I have a very specific video idea that I've been talking about for quite some time, and I have not put in the focused work. For whatever reason, I have something going on that's like a fear and resistance to it. And so the commitment I'm going to make in this moment is that tomorrow I'm going to spend 33 minutes to keep it spiritual AF. I'm going to do a 33-minute timed session where I'm focused on the script for this video. And I think I've maybe shared it with you, but it's going to be a video about masturbation, about specifically men masturbating to porn. Because I think that it's like a taboo, not talked about like pandemic that a lot of men experience. I did for years and still occasionally like fall into that. And it's kind of like a joke, but I think it's something that is actually kind of serious, and we have yet to see like the long-term effects, because the internet and the instant access to pornography online and masturbating, just like mindlessly blowing loads, like our life force energy without any intention behind it. I think the repercussions of that are yet to be seen. Like we're starting to see it, but I think that it's a lot bigger of a potential issue than might be realized. So that's what I'm committing to.
I love that, man. I really hope that comes out soon. Really quick to end, because you brought up a really good point, man. I think it's way more important than people really think. There's a lot of things, like, I think energetically, that are happening that I've witnessed in my own life that prevent us from finding someone in our life that wants to be in relationship with us. Like, as soon as I stopped making those choices in my own life and actually went through Instagram and Facebook and deleted all the women that I really just started following because I found them attractive and they were taking pics of their booty, and I was squat butt, whatever, all that other shit.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I finally was like, dude, God, I ain't fucking around anymore. I'm going to delete all this shit. And literally, no lie, within like 3 weeks to a month, not soon after, things really started changing, and I found my current partner right now. And so I think it's powerful, man. I hope that comes out soon.
Yeah. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. I love you, man.
Love
Thanks
you
for
too.
being on here, dude.
Yeah, dude.
I'll definitely invite you back on.
I experienced flow throughout this thing, man. Time, I don't know how much time has even gone by. It's freaking awesome, man.
Yeah. Well, stuff.
All right,
All right,
brother. I'll
brother.
talk to you soon, man.
Till next time, man. Peace.
Peace.